so you can recognize them there on the photo. Right? So out here, these launch complexes are used to launch all the different types of rockets and missiles that they created from the early 50s, where the first one went up in the early 50s, and then through the 50s and the 60s, depending on what they needed. I like to refer to these launch complexes really as dormant volcanoes. Right? They're never really dead. They're active or they're dormant, and then they bring them back to life. So they'll say, oh, they're not going to use that again, but then something comes up, like, ULA comes up with something, Blue Origin wanted a spot, of course SpaceX had their spot, and little by little, these are getting reactivated and being used again. So this is very useful out here. Also, it's a very beautiful beach out there. I get the fish out there because I volunteered. It's done. You'll get the names of all the different rockets and missiles, and then you'll also get the name of the mice, the monkey, or the man who went up in that particular rocket. It's a rocket if it's friendly, and it's a missile if it's not friendly. So if NASA's controlling it, it's a rocket. Okay, if the military is controlling it, it's a missile. All right, and that's the kind of the difference. NASA is still involved, but the private enterprise is running the show now as far as with all the rockets that are taking place. So the way the engineer explained it to me one day when I asked him that question, he said, NASA is now the customer, and ULA, Blue Origin, SpaceX, they're UPS. Okay, so they'll put whatever you want up there, you just have to pay them to do it, and they do it more efficient and less money than NASA would do it. They bring that back. Those black stripes at the bottom are engines, and there's 9 of them on there, and that thing's worth $90 million. So they can now, with GPS, they can land that right on the ground, and then they just put it on the truck, take it back in, they refurbish it. I'm sure that costs them millions of dollars to refurbish it, but it doesn't cost them $90 million, right? And so they can use it again and again and again, which helps them save a lot of money, because they can use it again. Now, eventually, they have to scrap it and go. And like the big rocket that Elon tried to get up there the other day, was like a week or two ago, where they had this self-destruct. Okay, and they do have self-destruct on there still, so that in case it doesn't go exactly where they did. In the beginning, when Bob Brown had it, they put them in New Mexico, and out in New Mexico they put it because back in the late 40s, early 50s, there weren't a lot of people out there, but they still couldn't control the rockets. You can see a little piece of one over there. The one that you just passed coming in, the big rocket out front, is called a Navajo. And what happens is a lot of these, even like this snark, the red one here, is called the snark, okay? And what would happen is it would come in on this skid strip here. This is a skid strip because it didn't have wheels, it had skids. The snark had skids, just like the Navajo does, they'd come in. And they didn't always hit it perfectly, and they didn't always stop before they got to the water, okay? So they would end up in the water, or they would fire them off, and this was back in the Mexico days. They'd fire them off in Mexico, and they'd end up in New Mexico, and they'd end up in Mexico or someplace where they didn't know where they were at. So eventually, when one landed on a lot of land, people, they say, in Mexico, they had to move them out of there, but luckily it was a cemetery where it landed. Alan Shepard was the first one to go up, and this is the Mercury capsule. That is the actual size, shape, weight, everything of the Mercury capsule that he was in. It's just not the actual one that went up. It was their test one on the ground, right? And Alan Shepard went up first, and then Grissom went up a month or so after that, right? But they didn't orbit. They just went up in it, and that's the Mercury. And the way the room's set up, you go from the Mercury, then you go around the room here. When you get over to LC-14, then you'll meet John Glenn. Right, John Glenn, first to orbit. The Americans, first to orbit. Russians had already done all this a little while before. Right? Not that far over. Right? Then you get to the Gemini. Now, the reason for the Gemini, where I was pointing out the console for you, and that is the actual console used to launch the Gemini. The 10 photographs above there are the astronauts that were on the Gemini capsules. And you'll recognize all their names because they're all the Apollo astronauts. Because what the Gemini did was taught them how to dock, taught them how to get to and from the moon, and they needed to learn that part before they could get to Apollo, which was your 3-man capsule. So you had your 1-man capsule, your 2-man capsule, and your 3-man capsule. Now we only had one Apollo launch site here, which was an unfortunate, LC-34 was the one where it wasn't really a launch site, it was a test site when they didn't make it, it didn't work out, and they passed away, the 3 astronauts on LC-34, because Apollo was all launched from 39, which is the Kennedy Space Center, so that's why you won't find a lot of Apollo here at all.
And we're watching this thing go up, and I'm watching this delta, and it looks like it's right straight up. And I'm thinking, if that thing blows up, it's going to rain fire down on top of us. This doesn't, but it turns out it's not. It really wasn't. No, at the command and strut console in the launch center, if that thing starts to
Space Force Station to train rescue and recovery forces during the Murphy Festival in 1960.
With the trucks, take it back. Yeah. I can show you a great picture of one when they used to bring it on the barge, because I was at Jimmy Park one day, taking a picture of my grandkids. It was coming down the channel. It was right, I mean, big as you please. You can't miss it.
Very impressive.
Yeah, very impressive.
Hello? Hello? Oh, yes, it is. Yes, I am. Okay, I'll be there in a little while. Thank you for calling. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.